fuck all y'all. No, you're all still high from last night. I appreciate it. What's up to Something to Warrior for saving the day yesterday. Oh, horrible incident. Oh, we made it through. Shouts to NORML for putting this on. Shouts to everybody on Pot TV watching, as well as on Facebook, Cannabis Culture. We appreciate everybody who's tuning in. Yes, the audio's been a little glitchy and the video's frozen a couple of times. I'm sorry. We're doing the best we can. The Vapor Central computer is trying, but you guys have hotboxed the shit out of it, and it's like, yo, it's the weekend. I didn't think I have to work this hard, and it's struggling. But we're doing the best we can to broadcast it. Thank you very much for putting up with the patience. We're trying everything we can do, and sorry we didn't have Bubble Man, but luckily for you, coming up here as soon as I'm done flapping my gums, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Princess of Pot, Jodie Emery.
Well, it's been a while since I've been here. I'm out on bail, so mostly I just stay at home. And actually, I was just tweeting about how 6 months ago to this moment, I was in Old City Hall, down in the dungeons of the basement, in handcuffs, about to be shipped off in a court vehicle to a maximum security women's jail. It would be my second night in custody after being arrested on March 8th, alongside Mark and Chris and Aaron Goodwin and Brittany Guerra. The 5 of us were arrested in a massive crackdown they called Project Gator. And I still can't figure that one out, except for the fact that gators are pretty vicious when they go after what they're targeting. So they were pretty vicious with us. They've shut down all the stores in Toronto. They really put us on ice. What they've aimed to do and accomplished in a way is to lock us out from participating and to lock us up in jail and to face the penalty of long time in prison, because that's what exists on the books. It's a very strange time because, you know, I supported the Liberals. I supported them for legalization. I ran to be a candidate. I was a nomination candidate. I endorsed their policy of legalization because after a long, long time of activism, much less than many other people I have to give credit to who inspired me early on and many others, but many activists have been fighting for so long for legalization because we knew that there are about 3 reasons I've come to conclude. There are 3 reasons to legalize. Number 1, we shouldn't be criminalized. We shouldn't be treated as criminals. Peaceful, non-violent Canadians should not be regarded as criminals for doing something that is good for their health in many ways. And even if it's bad for their health, it's a free choice. So the free choice of citizens to use and possess and grow and share and supply cannabis, that shouldn't be criminal. And most Canadians know that their dealer is not a shady guy in a trench coat. It's a friend, it's a family member, it's somebody who loves cannabis and loves to share it. And that's what we want legalized. So stop criminalizing us and legalize what already exists. That's what legalization was supposed to do. And it was also supposed to stop the multi-million-dollar expenditures on cannabis law enforcement. All across the world, trillions of dollars are spent targeting people like us for cannabis. People like us who gather together to share this plant lose their children, they lose their jobs, their home. I think of these stories I hear from all over the world where people are even executed for cannabis. We're lucky. Look at us. We're actually in paradise right now. We're in a lounge. They don't even have this where it's legal in the United States. They don't have something like this which isn't technically legal. We have a lot of freedom here, and there's a lot of oppression going on everywhere else, but just because we aren't suffering as badly here doesn't mean we shouldn't be upset. Legalization was supposed to liberate us, and it was supposed to stop the unfair injustice of criminalizing people for cannabis. And as we know, cannabis prohibition has unfairly targeted marginalized people, the poor, the young, people of color, First Nations. We have so many evidence and science, so much of it shows that cannabis prohibition is unjust and needs to end. So how can they call what they're doing legalization? How can the Liberal government of Canada and the Liberal government of Ontario say that they're legalizing cannabis when they continue to criminalize everything that was criminalized before? What is being legalized? What's being legalized? I guess they're decriminalizing 30 grams of pot for adults and 5 grams of pot for young people. I guess they're decriminalizing 4 plants in your home. I suppose they're like legalizing the ability of companies to sell medical marijuana and then sell it as recreational marijuana when it's legal to do so. I guess legalization means that a few people are going to benefit, but really the rest of us are going to continue to suffer. The government has said they don't want to normalize cannabis. They want to restrict and limit access. And yesterday we saw the government announce they're going to have a monopoly on the distribution of cannabis when it's legal recreationally next year. That goes alongside the federal Liberal government saying they are going to have a monopoly on the production of cannabis for recreational legal purposes. So the feds are monopolizing the production. They're giving out licenses to a lot of people. They are increasing that. I have to give them credit. They're trying to license more and more producers of cannabis. But why don't they just license all the existing producers who want to be legal? Why can't the existing industry be given a chance to come out of the shadows and into the light? How dare the government accuse us of being criminals when they are the ones who criminalize us? When the government says they want to remove the criminal element, I say, how can you do that when you criminalize it? It's insane. You feel like you're in some backwards world because it just doesn't make sense. Except for some, it does. Some people are going to benefit from this legalization. And guess who they put in charge of the legalization file? A former narc, a former top cop, a guy who spent his life going after people for marijuana and demonizing it and ruining people's lives. Bill Blair, the guy who oversaw G20, the biggest Canadian mass civil rights violation and arrest in our history. Bill Blair, a former narc of G20, is going to try to do to 420 what he did to G20, and he's going to lock people up and throw them in warehouses and throw away the key. They put a cop in charge of legalization. That's like giving a homophobic priest the control of drafting gay marriage laws. It's offensive, it's disgusting, and it gets even worse. Because as we've seen over the last 2 years, a lot of former politicians and law enforcement officers have gotten involved in these medical marijuana companies. Many of them, after fighting legalization, after fighting against cannabis, they said, oh wait, it's going to be legal medically and then recreationally, and it's going to be worth billions, and I'm going to cash in. After cashing in on taxpayer dollars going after those very same people. So now you've got the retired cops and politicians making money on marijuana that they want to criminalize the competition for providing. And then you've got the cops that are currently serving, keeping their police budgets. And get this, if you didn't hear about it yesterday, Bill Blair announced with such glee that the police across Canada will receive $275 million more for marijuana legalization law enforcement. What the? Like, I'm serious. They already get hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're getting $250 million to go after you and your growers and your patients? $250 million that should be going towards medical marijuana research. That should be going towards getting people out of jail. Should be going towards communities who are poor and suffering and being churned through those courthouses like meat through a grinder. 6 months ago, I got to see firsthand what I'm fighting against. And I kind of try and ignore or forget what it was like, but then I get really upset and I feel really violated. When I remember that what happened to me happens to people all the time and every day, and every time there's a raid, people suffer this. They get put in handcuffs. They get put in a cell. They get stripped naked. And in my case, it wasn't once, it was twice. And what was really weird was this was the first time in my life, after hearing about how I'm a woman and I can protect my body and my right to my privacy, I have the right to give or deny consent. I get to say yes or no to anyone who wants to look at me. And here I was, for the first time, in the custody of men and women with guns, holding me in a concrete cell, telling me to take off my shirt and take off my bra. And then I got to put those back on and then take off my underwear and take off my pants and squat and cough and all that shit. And then when I went to jail at a maximum security the next night, and I thought, okay, I'm tough. I've been through this once before. And they said, we're going to strip search you. I'm like, okay, top first and then bottom, right? They said, no, everything all at once. And I was like, I can't say no. I can't say no. Here I am, a peaceful Canadian who has never hurt anybody, and I'm in a concrete cell underground with people with guns telling me to get naked. For what? And I can't say no. That's what they do when they deny your freedom for cannabis. Because right now I still live under that threat. Like any moment now, they could come through that door and accuse me of breaking my bail or something and drag me off again. A lot of us live with that fear, and it's disgusting and it's wrong, and I'm still really deeply upset about it. And like I said, I try and get over it and say, it's okay. You know, I'm tough. I was in arrest. I knew what was coming. I broke the law. I knew it was possible. But this little queen bin here, I've been fighting against that for a long time, and when I see that happen still today, after legalization was supposed to start, when I see that being promised for people in the future under legalization, when I hear the government stand there, and I was there at the press conference yesterday, and the ministers of the province were standing there saying, for your health and safety, we're going to crack down and throw you all in jail. For your health and safety, we're going to shut down your shops and open up our own, right where those shops already exist. Like, this is really despicable. Not only are these guys paid by our tax dollars taken from our labor to protect and serve us, they're then turning against us and using our money against us to oppress us and deny us our freedom. And then, after realizing they have to kind of declare surrender, that, yeah, we got to legalize it, they then got all Orwellian and decided, wait, we can keep doing the same thing, call it legalization, own the companies ourselves, get even more money to enforce legalization, law enforcement. Holy smokes! We, the cops, are going to cash in like fat pigs at the taxpayer trough while we take all these innocent people and stomp all over them and tear apart their families. It's disgusting. The very same governments that fought against legalization are looking to put legalization activists in prison and profit from pot themselves while they continue this war, continue this meat-churning machine, putting innocent, peaceful people through this process. It's appalling. And I was so hoping we could just sit back and do regulatory activism, you know, fighting over bylaws and stupid handrail rules and all that stuff. But no, now we have to sit here and wait every day as we hear about more raids coming. The government just promised yesterday that over the next 12 months, they're going to spend $250 million going after dispensaries and peaceful people for pot. They've told you you're on notice. They said, we're letting you know. We're letting you know now before we send in the guns, before we send in the government's gangster goons to shut you down for their own monopoly. It's disgusting. I mean, yes, there's positive things that people like us could try and find money and start licensed producers, and eventually we could sell through stores, and that's better than what we had under Harper and all that. But just because you have stage 1 cancer doesn't mean, you know, you're not bad off because stage 4 is worse. You know, we have a lot of good things going on, it's true, but that doesn't mean we have to shut up and just stop. That means we have to keep fighting because we're setting an example for other people. I get messages from all over the world especially after yesterday, people saying, you have to keep fighting. You have no idea what this means. And I'll never forget like the people I meet who can't ever come out. And I was in Vancouver and there's a family at the beach, grandma, parents, kids, grandkids, enjoying their vacation. And they wanted a photo, so I said, I'll take your photo. I took the picture. They carried on. I went and sat down at the beach. And the lady came up to me after from the family and said, Jodie, you're Jodie Emery, right? I need to tell you that what you're doing is so important. Because I'm an actress and I'm a singer. And she had like this flair about her, so I could tell. And she said, I'm an actress and I'm a singer, and those are my kids. And we've been growing cannabis for a long time, and that's how I put my kids through school. That's how I pay my rent. That's how I support my community. And we're not hurting anybody, but we can't come out. So thank you to you and all the activists for speaking up for people like us. It's not a bunch of gangsters. It's not a bunch of thugs and violent killers trying to force little kids to smoke pot. But that's what the government wants to paint us as. They want to demonize us so they can stigmatize us and criminalize us and then try and destroy us. They want to take away your rights. They want to deny you your freedoms. And this happens every single day. Like the mother who I heard from who has Crohn's disease and lost her kids to Children's Aid. That's disgusting. And how about the government's plan to shut down dispensaries? How about how there's evidence from the United States on their drug-free website saying that dispensaries reduce opioid deaths? Dispensaries reduce opioid deaths. So I'm calling these politicians murderers. Every time they say they're going to crack down on these dispensaries, they're saying they're going to send more people to die. It's murder by second degree or something, I don't know, but it's outright destruction of lives because the evidence from decades show cannabis and dispensaries reduce addiction, overdoses, and death. So as the opioid crisis grips this country and as the politicians are actually doing good things by calling in some places for decriminalization or more supervised injection sites, and God bless the Overdose Prevention Society people for doing what they do with the pop-up tents. Like there's a big call for drug law reform, for PTSD and all sorts of things, but cannabis is still demonized. I don't get it. I don't understand. Why do they hate us so much? Why do they hate this plant so much? Why do they hate our people so much? What is it that we've done wrong? It's because we're free thinkers. It's because cannabis is the tree of life. Cannabis gives you freedom for your health, for your spirit, for your mind. Cannabis brings people together. Cannabis helps people avoid alcohol and hard drugs and dangerous pharmaceuticals. Cannabis helps people find peace in a world where we're constantly inundated with threats of terror and war and horrible things. Cannabis helps us find peace. And it makes us question authority. Because when you start to realize the government's lying about cannabis, then you start to realize they're lying about a lot of other things. And then you start to want to change that, and then the government gets really upset because the government needs people to be sick and suffering and struggling for their minimum wage paycheck to pay their rent, and then maybe they can sell some pot on the side to get by, and they want to make sure you go to jail if you do that. Everything about the government is keeping you under their control. Government is about telling you what you can or cannot do. Government wants to deny you your rights, and especially with cannabis, we're seeing that illustrated on a constant basis. But in a way, it's good. It's kind of good when you're on a playground and you see a bunch of children playing, and then there's that one kid who comes up to the little guy and starts punching his face in, and you go, holy smokes, that's wrong. You're a bully. You're a mean person. You're using brute force against a nonviolent, peaceful victim. At least you can see who the bad guys are. At least we know who the good guys are. The good guys are the cannabis culture and the community and the activists and the patients and the growers and the lawbreakers. The people who have used civil disobedience to change the law through hard-fought battles that I can't even imagine trying to win, but I have to point out we've got heroes here amongst us who have won these battles, like John Conroy and other lawyers who have won your freedom and your access through the courts because of people who broke the law and got punished for it. So right now, when you hear all this talk about, well, there's going to be legal stores and then illegal stores. The illegal stores are the bad guys. They have to shut down. No, the illegal stores aren't the bad guys. The illegal stores are who the government isn't allowing to participate. The illegal stores are the victims of a prohibition policy and a new form of legalization that's so excessively taxed and regulated and restrictive as to deny us the ability to even possibly transition. They're basically saying we're going to prevent you from engaging in the process, and then we're going to punish you because you can't engage in the process. It's so wrong and backwards, but as I said, there are beneficiaries. The police are going to get a lot of money. Mental health and addictions, people are going to get a lot of money. But this is when our movement also needs to start getting a lot of money and putting it towards legal challenges. Getting it to fight back against these injunctions, fight back against the denying of access for patients. There are so many ways that you can become active, and I know we've said it all before, but you don't have to risk your life and liberty and freedom to make a difference. You can call into a radio station and use a fake name, Joe from Toronto. You know, I don't like what they're going to do. You can send a letter to the newspaper and sign your name and say, I'm a proud professional, I'm a proud cannabis consumer, and this is my name, and I believe we should be offering more freedom and access. You can march in the streets. Anybody available on Monday? On Monday at Queen's Park, please try and show up. Follow my Twitter feed. I'll share the event info. I'm not going to be here, but in Toronto, Ontario's government at Queen's Park just said a big F you. So you guys should go back and say, please, can we be free? Please, can you stop oppressing us? Please, can you legalize us? That's what it's supposed to be about. Bring your signs about being a patient or a victim of prohibition and be heard. And I'll send the media to cover your stories and share your message with the people of Toronto. Because meanwhile, Mark and I and many others will be in Ottawa. Because right now in Ottawa, before all the parliamentarians get back to work, there's going to be a week of hearings with the Health Committee. The Health Committee is set to review cannabis legalization, which is being called the Cannabis Act C-45, Bill C-45. Now, this bill is no good, but if it was up for vote, I'd probably vote for it and keep campaigning for change, because that is what we did in Washington and Colorado and everywhere else where legislation was really kind of crappy. But we accepted it because you got to take what you can get and always ask for more. Incrementalism, step by step, even if it's painfully slow, take what you can get and always ask for more. But this bill is so awful, and we actually get a chance to try and change it, for better or worse. And right now, in Ottawa, people are preparing for the Health Committee hearings. And there's going to be a lot of reefer madness bullshit. Oh man, we're going to hear some stuff that's going to make you want to rip out your bong and relax right there in the gallery, because it's going to be excruciating, just like yesterday when I had to hear them lie and lie about cannabis being harmful to society. In Ottawa, however, we are going to have our voice there. The NDP has invited a number of advocates and experts in cannabis to speak about cannabis truth. And expert joints, they're looking for you to do it on your show because they subscribe at Expert Joints. But these cannabis advocates are going to be there to speak out about cannabis truth, about the facts about cannabis. And the government says, we're going to look at this from a health perspective, not a justice perspective. So that's kind of weird, because cannabis legalization is supposed to be about the criminal justice reform, about ending the criminalization of peaceful people. But they don't want to. They don't want to admit that cannabis is actually good for you after they lied for decades. So they still need to tell you that it's bad for you, and they're legalizing it to protect you from it. So this message of health is going to be their focus. And I'm saying, well, fine, okay, make health the focus instead of justice. Let's talk about how cannabis is good for your health. Let's talk about how cannabis is improving the health of babies and infants and little children who are suffering from seizures. Let's talk about how cannabis is beneficial for teenagers who are on antidepressants and psychopharmaceuticals that are harmful for their health. Let's talk about how cannabis is good for the health of middle-aged people who are preventing Alzheimer's, preventing the onset of ailments, trying to find some relaxation by having a toke instead of a drink. What about all those adults who want to be free? What about them? Why are we talking about the kids all the time? Nobody's trying to open up the pot for tots shop. Nobody is out there saying, but it should be legal for me to sell it to the 3-year-olds. No, we want it to be legal to sell to each other, consenting adults like we've always done, but under the threat of arrest. That's what should be legal for the adults. And cannabis is good for the health of seniors too. And more people are finding cannabis is the safer choice than pharmaceuticals, than all of the medications that they're on. And in fact, cannabis can even improve your health and repair damage from drinking and from pharmaceuticals and from anything that may ail you. I believe cannabis can help you with. I am a cannabis evangelical. I do believe this is the tree of life and that cannabis can heal our bodies and our planet. But cannabis is good for your health, and that's what the health committee should be talking about. But they're not. They're not looking for us to talk about how it's good for your health. They want to tell Canadians how it's bad for your health, so let's keep it illegal so the good old boys in blue can keep arresting the baddies and protect us from the weed. So it's really kind of discouraging realizing I still face serious punishments, and a lot of people are going to face serious punishments, and it's supposed to be legal, and people are confused on the street. They don't know what's what. Is it legal? Are storefronts illegal or not? Or, you know, they're getting raided and then they're not. And that's really frustrating because you need people to get very aware of what's going on in order to get worked up enough to give a damn to fight back. So the government might be giving us a blessing in disguise by promising this massive crackdown. We might see more people suffering, more people in pain, more people denied their jobs and their ability to pay taxes. We might see a lot of cops taking home bigger paychecks, and I guess that sort of awful outcome is going to be necessary to work people up enough to do something. Because you do get complacent. It's easy to get comfortable. It's really easy. I've spent the last 6 months not being allowed to work. So I'll tell you, after the stress of running that weird little cannabis culture dispensary empire thingy we were kind of working on for a while, which was fully admitted in the press, so I'm not sharing any news to you here, but I was busy. I was really busy. And then the cops took me away from all that work and told me basically, you have to live in Toronto in the center of power and be an activist full-time instead of running a business empire. So okay, I won't work anymore. I won't work on the business. I'll work on fighting for our cause again. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. Tommy Chong texted me the other day and said, you're still being super active. Like, good on you. I see you activisting out there, I think is what he said. But we have to, and I'll keep doing that. And I am tired. I'm really tired. I get sad. I get depressed. It's natural to go through those feelings. Like, at first I feel all righteous and like, yeah, we're getting the message out there. And then I'm like, but they don't care. They don't care because we've been giving the message all along, and they know the truth. They're just ignoring it. So then I get really discouraged. I'm like, oh, there's no way to win. But then I realize we win by reaching out to people and making them go use cannabis for the first time and find that relief and find that peace. That's who we're helping. We have to keep speaking up, spreading the word, and being cannabis advocates. We have to tell people about how cannabis is good for your health and good for this planet. And somebody asked me, what am I going to do when I'm not a pot activist anymore? And I said, well, I don't know, I'd like to do prison reform. I'd like to get all these families back together. I'd like to get rid of that punitive justice and help make more restorative justice. I keep thinking of all the kids that suffer when, you know, they know their parent is in prison and they're told prisoners are bad, but they know that their dad isn't a bad person, but they have to live in a society where they have to keep that shame. That's disgusting. That's disgusting to make innocent kids have to feel that. And I never cried in prison visiting Mark for me or him. I only ever cried because I saw these kids and these moms and these grandparents visiting their loved ones and trying to be so brave, trying so hard not to cry and failing a lot not to cry. There were a lot of tears, and that made me cry. And that's why I fight for these families who are torn apart and these people who are suffering. So we have to keep speaking up for all those victims of prohibition. We have to focus on still reforming justice. Even if there's pot shops run by the Ontario government a year from now, that's not the end. Nobody should be going to work and being told to pee in a cup and then lose their job. Not for incompetence, not for impairment. You can be a gold star employee and lose your job because you peed in a cup and tested positive for pot. You have people losing their kids, their homes, getting kicked out because it smells like pot. There's all sorts of unfairness and stigma that still exists, and we have to fight against that. But once that's done, let's tackle some bigger issues like, I don't know, climate change. Climate change, whether you believe it or not, there's a lot of carbon, there's a lot of issues right now. We have no solutions, though. We have a crisis right now where everybody's talking about how to lower carbon emissions to prevent it from getting worse without any solution about how to reverse those problems. Well, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy, but the evidence actually backs me up. Cannabis removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Cannabis actually reverses that process. Cannabis stores it and removes it. And cannabis actually can help clean the air when you build with it. So when they build all these towers in Toronto, every block there's a tower, and they're using concrete. If they were using hempcrete, those buildings would be actively removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and making it carbon neutral, which I don't actually understand much beyond all that with those numbers and tons of carbon, this and that. I don't get that. What I get is that cannabis can actually heal our planet. That when we think of all the housing problems across Canada on so many First Nations reserves, there's the housing crisis and there's buildings falling apart. And in Africa, they're using hemp to build houses. And around the world, you can use hemp to build houses. It's so simple. You use hemp and water and lime. You mix them up. You build a house like a snow fort. Whatever you want, build it. Build it with the hempcrete. And that home will be flood-proof, fireproof. It will keep you warm in the winter, and it will keep you cool in the summer, and it removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. My God, hemp houses can save our planet and house our homeless and put people in safe structures instead of struggling and suffering in the cold. And they're terpy maybe too. I don't know. You might be able to smoke it in a real crisis. But I just keep thinking about how cannabis can do so much, and that's why this criminalization is so wrong. You know, prohibition of alcohol, that was a mistake. Prohibition of sex workers, that's a mistake too. They're messing up people's lives when they prohibit things. They create the crime by criminalizing it. But cannabis isn't even like alcohol or tobacco or like nothing else actually out there, because cannabis is good for our health. Cannabis should be legal and promoted. It shouldn't be legal and demonized or legal and restricted or legal and kept underground. It should be legal and promoted as a form of harm reduction, as a safer choice, as a way to find peace and health. And I think people are finding it. I think people have already done it. That's why we've made so many gains, because we all know the truth. The government just wants to deny that truth, but since when was that news, that the government's full of liars and scammers and con artists? Newsflash. So while we're here at the Karma Cup and you look at these wonderful samples and the magazines, you know how crazy these pot laws are? That magazine, the Highway magazine, it's illegal. Cannabis magazines and books, illegal. Cannabis bongs and vaporizers, illegal. Everything we do is illegal, but the fact that we exist and we continue to flourish, that's encouraging because no matter how much they criminalize us, as the saying goes, they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. And like Mark Emery said so long ago, plant the seeds of freedom to overgrow the government. I do believe the government is overgrown. They're just going crazy with a machete trying to frickin' chop it down and make sure it doesn't spread because they hate us so much. But we're not full of hate. We're full of love, compassion, tolerance, and we deserve dignity, equality, freedom. And that's why I'll keep speaking up as much as I can. And next week in Ottawa, I will be there to testify on Friday and to just be there hearing it all and doing what we can to make a difference and speak up for all the patients and the prohibition victims and all of the future consumers of cannabis who deserve access and choice, and all of the current users of cannabis who also deserve the same. I really don't know what time it is because cannabis actually does that to people. So 6:30, wow, I don't know. Even I get tired of hearing myself talk, I'm honest about it. I'm sure the government and cops do too, but I'm like, trust me, I would love to quit. Please, please stop giving me stuff to complain about. Oh my goodness. And it's also like, everybody likes to be right. It feels good when you're right, when you find that little fact and you Google it on your phone. You're like, yeah, I was right. That feels good. But it feels not so good when you were right about really bad stuff happening. It's like, I really don't want to be right about it. We kind of said it might happen. I really didn't want to be that, negative Nelly and downer Dolly or whatever the names are. I don't want to be that person. But we have to warn people about what can happen in order for them to actually know when it's underway and to give a damn. So, like I said before, just because things aren't as bad as they could be doesn't mean we have to stop complaining. Like, I'm blessed. Right now, I'm living, honestly, even though I'm out on bail, I'm a woman in Canada, in Toronto, in a pot lounge. I am legally authorized to use cannabis because I had to do that to not get in trouble on bail. So I do have a license. I can be that person by the cops and be like, yeah, look at my paperwork. I don't know. Everybody should have that right. Nobody should have to carry around that piece of paper. But so it goes. A little bit of access is better than none. Incremental steps, take what you can get and always ask for more. So, like I said, though, I wish I was wrong about the government doing the wrong thing. But they always do the wrong thing because that's what government does. That's just what they do. They control you, like I said. They tell you what you can't do. And then they tell you what you can do. So when you break those rules, you end up in handcuffs and in a cell, or through other punishments like they find now with asset forfeiture and threatening lawyers. Now that's one of the really, think about this for a second. The government could stop you on the street and they could take your bag and find $1,000 in it and say, oh, I think you're a weed dealer, I'm gonna take this. And they could do asset forfeiture. They could tell you, you have to prove to me that you bought all this with legitimate money. I don't know what's legitimate or not legitimate. It's all the same $20 bills and digital numbers. I think it's all money. It's all going in the same place. But the government says, we can take your stuff. If we think you've broken the law, we can take your stuff even without charging you or convicting you. That's straight up theft. But like I said, the government's all about control, and they are the decision makers. So that's why, as discouraging as it is, we have to engage in the process. That's why you have to join political parties and run for office and go to those policy meetings and write a letter to your member of parliament and do that sort of boring stuff because it does actually have an impact. Even though the Liberals have introduced a terrible form of legalization, guess what? They had to introduce legalization. They had to do it because the people demanded it, because the party membership voted for it, because the time had come. And the time only came because activists and advocates fought uphill, nonstop, under threat of arrest to educate people and to bring more attention to this cause. So our movement, we are winning. And if you were listening to Dana earlier, Dana is one of the only speakers that ever makes me get emotional. He'll make me cry because he inspires me so much because he's so optimistic about things. And I am a happy person. I'm always smiling. Generally I'm happy. But I'm always so upset with the government. I always feel let down, and then I kick myself why did you trust them in the first place? Why would you even think they'd do the right thing? But like I said, we have no other choice. They're the movers and shakers and policy makers. You've got to go and network with them and try and be heard, and you can have an impact. So get on Twitter. Go and find Jodie Emery on Twitter, because I will be announcing different ways to be active to fight back peacefully for our culture and our freedom. I've asked people to email me if you want, and I'm putting them into a folder for activism. So jodieemery@gmail.com. That's JODIEEMERY. You can email me at Gmail, jodieemery@gmail.com, and I'm going to work on a petition. I'll work on helping get support for a legal injunction, raising funds. I'm going to try and do whatever I can, even though I'm tired. We're all tired of fighting this. But we have to. Now is the time. When they just called out war on us, they just said yesterday they declared war on us, on our shops, on our shatter, on our brands, on our everything. So we have to take a stand. And I'll do what I can to make a difference. So follow us online, Cannabis Culture. You can follow us, of course, there. All the legal media, that's what I'm endorsing here. Only the legal things. But I don't know if people have questions. I don't know if this is really a place for question answer. It's kind of like, oh, how mad are you at the government? Oh, I'm real mad. Okay, but how about you? You know, I'm pissed off. See, there's not much more to say, because clearly we all know how we feel. We're kind of like, yeah, we all get it. It's kind of crummy, but at the same time, we're sitting here smoking pot in a pot lounge, and it's pretty awesome. So protest prohibition, celebrate cannabis, and try and get in touch and stay active and involved, and let's make a difference. So thank you to NORML. Now I need to shout this out, because there is always, every time something bad happens, people say, you know what, we should organize a new group. Let's make a new group. Let's have a new coalition or a new organization or a new this or that. And while it's very true that it's better to have many different groups that can't be removed with one sweep, so it's good to have lots of people doing their thing, there are some organizations that have names that carry weight and credibility in the history of cannabis law reform, and NORML is definitely one of those names in Canada and the US and definitely all over the world. So right now you're hearing me speak because I'm here at the invitation of NORML Canada for this conference, where they're inviting people to inform you and inspire you and get you active and engaged. And they need your activity and engagement too. So go online, find NORML Canada on Twitter or on their website, and I'm sure you can speak to the organizers here about what you can actually do. Now, I get asked all the time, what can I do? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. We have to figure out something. Get back to me later. I'll make an event or something. But the truth is, you can actually do something on your own that will be bigger than you can ever imagine. You could go to your member of parliament's office and request a meeting and have an impact because nobody talked to them about pot before. You could take a sign. This is one of my favorite things to do as an activist, holding up signs, because visuals are the medium. We all look at screens. We're always looking at visual, moving images and images. Signs and protest signs are very powerful. That's why you see them everywhere during elections. You see names hammered into your brain over and over again about who you should vote for. Well, let's get more signs out there with cannabis truth messages. Make a sign with big legible letters. Don't take a Bic pen and write on a piece of cardboard. Nobody can read it. Take a big Sharpie, get really nice and baked. Sit down, arts and crafts time. That's what's fun about it. You get to get a big piece of paper or a sign and make a message. Criminalization hurts Canadians. No prison for pot. Cannabis is good for my health. Anything. Make a message. Stand on a street corner and hold that sign up. Honestly, right outside Vapor Central, right here. Do you have any idea how much traffic goes by? Just tell yourself and your friends, hey, guys, let's do something really fun. Let's roll up a bunch of joints. Let's go and get super relaxed so that we're not mad about the injustice we're fighting against. And let's go stand on the street with signs. And you'll get honks. You'll get people coming up to you, asking what they can do. You'll get people coming and sharing their story with you. You might get some old cranky person being like, oh, you stoners, you should go to jail. And then you can be like, I feel even better about who I am right now. So you can go and make a difference. It's very easy. Just show up. Like yesterday, when the ministers had their press conference, I knew I wouldn't be invited. Like, I can't go in there like, hi, I'm Cannabis Culture Media. Let me in to the minister's press conference and let me sit there. Well, actually, that's kind of a funny story. They did let me. And I don't know if you remember a year ago at the police chief press conference after the Project Claudia raids, when we had our rally. And then I went inside and I asked if I could go, and nobody said no, so I just stood there. And then the police chief was lying, and great gardener beside me, he was saying cannabis truth, and the media were upset too. Like the news media were really upset because 2 days before a poll came out saying that the majority of Toronto voters supported dispensaries, even recreational ones, not just medical. So the media were like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Why are you cracking down so hard? And the media were asking all these questions, so I asked questions too. I just put up my hand and start talking. And if you want to go, you can go look it up. There's a video. Basically, we accidentally took over the police chief's press conference, and the police got really, really mad. And then fast forward a year to, I don't know. You all know what happened. I'm out on bail right now. So what happened was they spoke truth to power. So yesterday I thought, there's no way, these guys, they're going to talk their BS, and I'll just sit here at home and wait for the interview calls to come in. But I got woken up by CTV News. And they said, Jodie, are you going to the press conference? And I said, I don't think I can. He said, why not? It's at 900 Bay Street on the second floor in the Wellington room. I thought, oh, okay, well, all right, I'll get up and shower and go now. So I did. I got up and I smoked a joint, and I went and I walked over there, and I walked in and asked where I could go, and they said, follow the media signs. And so I went up to a lady and I said, hi, I'm here for the press conference. And she's like, oh, sure, are you accredited media? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm with Cannabis Culture magazine. And she's like, what's your name? So I gave it to her, Jodie Emery. She types it in her phone. She Googled me, and she said, oh, yeah, you're all good. Yeah, we just have to look people up to make sure they're not any problem or whatever. So she takes me over to 5 women sitting at the sign-in desk and says, this is Jodie Emery. She's going to come into the press technical briefing, so let her in when they open up. And I couldn't believe it. So I was standing there like, I felt like I was going to get in trouble. Like, honestly, I'm like, what am I doing here? Because they then let me in, and I went and I sat at a table at the side of the room. I didn't want to go, be in the way. I just sat at one of the round tables, and they hand out these information booklets about what the Ontario plan is going to be. And we all heard the news the night before, so we knew, like, oh, this is a bunch of bull. Okay, so I didn't bother sharing that information because they made an announcement saying, all right, media, you have to make sure you do not share any of this information during the briefing. There's an embargo until the ministers talk at the press conference after this. So nobody tweet or share anything of this document. So I'm like, okay, but I'll tweet a picture that I'm in here. And so I took a picture of the wall where they had this sign saying it was an event, and I said I was there. And then the minister's assistant guy came in and started screaming, all right, media, I told you, nobody's to tweet anything. Who looks at me? You. Who are you? And I'm like, Jodie Emery. I'm not kidding. All the media are with me. There's a news guy from Queen's Park beside me who's all chatty, and he pulls out his phone. And he's like, who are you? I'm like, Jodie Emery. He's like, you're not allowed to tweet. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, sir. I am very sorry. I promise I won't share any of this information. He's like, you're not allowed to share that info. I'm like, I won't share the info. So then they start talking, and I tweeted a tweet, something like, cannabis should be legalized for everybody's freedom. I don't know what I tweeted some generic statement, and a lady came up to me, and she goes, excuse me, Jodie, you can't tweet anything. And I said, I'm so sorry. That wasn't about the information. It was just an opinion. And she's like, you're not allowed to do that. I'm like, okay. So she leaves, and I keep listening. And then they ask the media for questions. And this isn't the press conference, by the way. This is the briefing. So beforehand, where they let the media know what's going on so the media can ask about what's going on. So this is all private. I don't know what I'm doing there. And neither do they, because I get on my phone and I retweet an old tweet about pot, and then The lady comes up to me again and goes, I told you not to use your phone. And I said, I'm not tweeting about the thing. And the guy across the room goes, excuse me, and interrupts the questions from the press. He goes, what's going on over there? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. He's like, you have to leave. And they made me leave. They made me get up in front of all the media and leave. And I was like, I'm not tweeting. Look at my Twitter feed. I'm not tweeting about this. I promise. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And they dragged me out. And then she dressed me down, and she saw I was really sad because I was embarrassed. I really was. And I was like sad about it. And she's like, I'll get someone to talk to you. Just wait here and I'll get someone to come out and talk to you. But by then the media were calling me, and then they all filed out and they're like, can we interview you next? We want to talk to you. So I'm like, okay, go to the press conference. I'll stand here in the hallway because I'm not allowed in. But then I asked the lady, can I go in? And she said, okay, fine. You can go in, but don't ask any questions. It's only for accredited media. So I go in there, right by the cameras, and the Minister of Health and the Minister of Finance and Minister of Public Safety, I think it was. And one of these guys has a movie announcer voice, the Minister of Finance guy. Man, it was like, I feel like an adventure is about to start because here in the, I won't even try, okay. Go watch the videos. This guy, I'm standing there like biting my tongue going, don't say anything, don't say anything. And they said, we're out to protect people from the harm of cannabis, the secondhand smoke that's going to be harming Canadians. And I'm like, oh, God, these guys, and I'm biting my lip. And I said nothing, though. I stood there. I was good. I didn't want to get thrown out during that part. So I waited until they finished. And they took all the questions, and then the ministers started leaving. And then I put up my hand like a good student in class, waiting for someone to call on me. And I said, but cannabis should be legalized to stop criminalizing the existing industry and to allow and I just started talking, like, you know how I do. So I started talking and the cameras were rolling, and then suddenly I accidentally made another press scrum where I was, some might say ranting and raving. I would say calmly, passionately delivering a very strong message. You can watch the video yourself. It's on Twitter. I'm not that crazy. I'm not a lunatic, but I am very worked up and very passionate and very pointed and very clear about what's going on and what we need to do about it. So after that, I did a bunch of interviews for the rest of the day, and you can see it on Twitter. But the point is, I just showed up. It was about showing up. I was in bed. I was going to sleep in and wait for phone calls, and they told me you should go, and I went, and I showed up, and that's what matters. And it matters no matter who you are. You don't have to be like Mark Emery's notorious like dispensary wife or whatever they see me as. You can be an ordinary citizen and go and have it. You can actually have a better impact than me, because when they see me coming, they're like, oh, God, we know what you want. Just shut up. So if it's me, they're not receptive. If it's you, you're a voter. You're a taxpayer. You're somebody that they might need to worry about upsetting. So that's where your power is. You can go. Because let me give you a little tip here. I've run for office a couple times, and this is how messaging to politicians work. When you tweet at a politician, they don't really care. When you call and deliver a message, they go, oh, well, you know, that person's pretty serious. That represents about, you know, I think 2 or 3 people feel the same way since that person got worked up enough to call. And email, it's about the same or even less. They go, okay, maybe like 5 people also feel like this email person feels. So that's how they count it. They go, okay, this issue, whatever the issue is, bike lanes, windmills, whatever it is, they count these. The most effective form of writing or contacting or messaging your politician is a letter, a printed paper letter, which I know is getting more and more obsolete, but they count that as at least 10 people's opinion. They say that letter represents 10 people. So if they get 10 letters like that, they say, oh man, 100 people are really upset about this pot thing. So it's super easy. And here's the best part. You know how people get really worried about, oh, what am I going to write? I have so much to say. I could fill a whole... Don't write a book. These guys do not read past talking points. Make it short, make it sweet, and they will read it. Send them a novel. They're not likely to look through it, but send them something short and sweet that they can read and digest. That will have an impact. So go home tonight, open up your laptop, or I think you can print from your phones these days. Write a message. Very easy. All you have to do is say, I disagree with this plan. I'm a voter and a taxpayer. Always throw that in there. That scares them. That's like, oh no, don't That's our bread and butter. Don't upset the voter taxpayer. So like throw that out there and say, I care about politics. I care about this issue. And if you don't change the way you're doing it, I will engage other people and bring them on board to also get upset at you for this. So do the right thing. And even if they do the wrong thing, again, at least you did the right thing. It's on them if they fail to follow through. But hey, at least we tried. And we're doing the best we can. And incremental steps. You know, like when I'm dead, I sure hope pot is everywhere. I hope it's all over the place. I can't have it today, but in the future, if I work hard enough, maybe they can. So when I think of all the activists behind and who have spoken at events, and I do think of Michelle Rainey, I think of people who were medical users and people who have suffered and passed on, and there have been quite a few lately, actually. And they gave their all. They gave their all, even though they knew that they might not be able to enjoy the victory spoils. But there might not even be a real victory at the end line because there is no end line. The fight for freedom from oppression goes on forever for women, for human beings, for all of us, all over the world. There is so much oppression and so much harm, and we're always fighting back against it, fighting peacefully. And that's how we gain ground, slowly, frustratingly, too painfully slow, but any gains are better than none at all. And it feels really good going to bed at night knowing that I tried to do something to help people and I didn't hurt anybody like our oppressors do. So take that with you, take action, go online, follow me, like I said, at Twitter, because that's where I spend a lot of time sharing news and cannabis facts. And I hope you'll send me an email, jodieemery@gmail.com, if you want to stay tuned for updates about how to make a difference. So thanks again to NORML Canada for letting me speak. I'm going to wrap it up here and then roll up a legal medical joint, and I hope everybody out there gets to roll up legal recreational joints from the grower of their choice in the future. That's the dream. So thanks a lot. Peace and pot. Take care, everybody.